Bleemer.
Bleemer?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Andre, this is Zach. Before we start, maybe I'll make just a little bit of an announcement. If any attendees think of questions that they'd like us to cover at the end, I'll be monitoring the chat feature, so you can shoot your questions over to us, and we'll do our best to address them either at the end of the webinar or over email after the webinar.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. This is Andre DeFontaine with the Department of Energy. And I think that we are going to go ahead and get started. So thanks for your patience. If you've been on for a little while, I think you caught some of the back and forth that we were having to set this up. So you got a sort of a behind the scenes look at how the magic happens behind these webinars. But now I think we'd like to go ahead and get started with the main event. So what we're going to be talking about today is a very important topic on data, specifically getting more out of the data you share. And there's really a couple of different components to this webinar. One of them is to walk folks through the process of sharing data with the Better Buildings Challenge, and then separately to talk about how you can leverage that process, and especially the outputs, to help move your energy management program forward. And we're going to share a few examples near the end of partners that have been able to do that. And we're very pleased to have Sam Bleemer from Will County, who's going to talk about their experience being able to leverage this data process to help move their goals forward. So we're looking at the agenda for today. I will start with a few words about energy data tracking and the importance of doing so. And then my colleague Sarah Lisauskas is going to get into some of the specifics about how you do that, the various steps, excuse me, and timelines and ways that we can help you. Things like accessing whole property energy data, and then the actual part of sharing that data with the Better Buildings Challenge, and then showing a few of the data reports that we generate with your help, how those work and how we do those together. And then, as I mentioned, we'll close with some partner success stories.
And Andre, sorry to interrupt, this is Zach again. I'll just make an announcement. I am going to start recording now. So if you hear things that you don't quite follow, please know that the recording will be available.
Okay, sounds good, Zach. Can you move to the next slide, please? Good. Well, for folks that are on this call, you are really ahead of the curve in terms of where you are with energy management and with energy data. You know, the mere fact that you're tracking it or that you've signed up for a program like Better Buildings Challenge puts you in a leadership position. So why track energy data? You may already know this, but I think it bears repeating. You know, measurement is really the first step towards management. I don't know how often we hear that expression, you can't manage what you don't measure, but some things get repeated a lot because they're true, and this is one of them. You don't know how you're progressing or if you have an issue unless you've got the data to support that. One of the things that the data does do is it helps you uncover opportunities for energy and cost savings. Are there some buildings that have exceptionally high energy use intensities? Maybe those are ones to take a look at first. The process can also help you ensure that you are being billed correctly for your energy consumption. And then the last one, which I think is very important, is that tracking the energy data is a way of demonstrating the progress towards your goals and validating your energy efficiency efforts. You're investing time and resources into developing energy management plans, identifying and pursuing projects. You want a way of being able to quantify whether those investments are paying off. Next slide, please. You know, we at the Better Buildings Challenge really define leadership as transparency, sharing, and action. And so your participation and the sharing of the data is really a key way that we're able to make sure that everybody is participating, that you're living up to the commitments that you made when you signed up for Better Buildings and you're making progress towards those very important goals. So some basics around how we measure and track excuse me, energy performance. You know, we ask everybody to set a baseline year, and then progress is tracked against that baseline year. And then we ask for data across the entire U.S. portfolio, and that's really a key aspect of Better Buildings that differentiates it from some other programs. We collect whole property data, and we ask that data be shared at the building level. As we track energy performance, we do so in terms of energy use intensity, and that might vary by sector, but for commercial and public buildings, typically it's energy consumption per square foot of building space. And then we share progress through the Better Building Solutions Center through data displays, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail later. I'll make a quick note that there's more detail on the specific data policies and protocols, which are included in the Better Buildings Challenge Data Tracking Manual. Everybody gets a copy of that when they join. If you're missing your copy, please let your account manager know, and he or she would be happy to send you a new version. Next slide. So let me just hit on a few key dates because while data tracking and sharing is important all the time, we are entering into a period where it's especially important as we work up towards the Better Buildings Summit, which is where we will be recognizing partners for their progress and then also issuing a report that presents some rolled up metrics across the program. So in the time period that we're in now, January through February, this is really the time to begin gathering data, utility bills through the calendar year, and then enter those in whatever bill tracking system you've got, and then review that data to ensure the accuracy of what you're dealing with. March 1st is the date that we would like partners to share their energy performance data with us. March 1st, don't be shy about providing early data. That actually helps us as we begin processing data from the many partners that we work with. And the sharing, by and large, takes place through Portfolio Manager, EPA's tool, though not exclusively. It's about 85% of our partners use Portfolio Manager. The rest use a template, a spreadsheet template that we've developed. So between March 1st and the middle of April, there's some back and forth with DOE, which Sarah is going to describe in a little bit more detail, where we help you make sure that that data is complete and as accurate as possible. April 14th is the date by which we're really looking to finalize the data, finalize the results so that we can weave them into our progress update and also build the data displays and prepare for recognition, which then takes place at the Better Building Summit, May 15th through the 17th. So I think with that, what I'll do now is pass it over to Sarah, who is going to describe some of these steps in a little bit more detail.
Thank you, Andre. All right. Maybe we'll start by saying, we're going to kind of go through the process of when partners submit their data and what DOE looks for to help make sure it's complete and accurate, as Andre said, in order to make sure you get recognized. And I think our sort of intended audience with this was for any new partners that haven't been through this process before. That's maybe your first time hearing this, and we want to prepare you kind of for what happens over the next couple months. I think it's a good refresher for those of you who have been doing this for a few years and know what you're doing. And we also run into sometimes organizations that have been with the program for years but have new contacts and need to bring those people in and understand the process. So to start, I'll just touch a little bit on accessing whole property data. I think a lot of our partners are pretty good at this point, but if anybody doesn't have access to their bills, there's a kind of few steps to consider. First, you can check with your accounting department for copies of bills or utility billing histories that they may have on hand. If you don't have it within your own organization, you can contact your utility to see what they can provide. They may have web-based account access. They may have spreadsheets with historical bills. They may have copies of recent bills that sometimes have a billing history on those bills. So there's a few ways to get at historical data from your utility. And then lastly, there are properties that may have some tenant-paid bills where it's a little bit more challenging to get the data for the whole property, including what the owner's paying as well as what the tenant's paying. So you can utilize tenant release forms or build in clauses to your lease that allow tenants to give you access to their data. There are also opportunities from certain utilities to obtain aggregate data for the entire building. If you provide them an address, they'll sum up all the tenant-paid bills on site. The links below, there's a map and a PDF document on the Energy Star website that lists all of the utilities that are providing aggregate data. So I encourage you to check that out if that's something that's important to you. All right, so as Andre was mentioning earlier, when it comes time to sharing data with a Better Buildings Challenge, there are two options to share data. The first is Portfolio Manager, which Andre noted about 85% of partners take advantage of that. So each partner gets a partner-specific Portfolio Manager account to share into. So it's uses the DOE, BBC, and then some version of your partner name. So many of you, if you've been partners for a while, already have been sharing data into this account, but if you are new, that there's a sharing process that you have to set up. The benefits of doing this is that the updates are automatically shared with DOE, so once you share with us, we can access your data every year and you don't have to reshare with us. The data in Portfolio Manager is normalized for weather and operating characteristics. You do get the 1 to 100 Energy Star score to benchmark against your peers for properties that are eligible. And it is a one-stop shop to track your energy, your water, and now your waste tracking in Portfolio Manager too, if that's something you're interested in. However, if partners are not using Portfolio Manager and have another software program that they're used to, there is an option to share through a data collection template. It's a basic Excel template. It's got a lot of the energy metrics, square foot metrics, kind of the things that we need to have to demonstrate your progress. So if you want to go that route, your account manager can send you a copy of the data. and work with you on that. So just a little bit more detail, if you are sharing with Portfolio Manager, within the Better Buildings Challenge data tracking manual that Andre mentioned, Appendix A has some detailed instructions on how to share. So the basic steps include connecting with the BBC sharing account, selecting the properties you wish to share, and choosing read-only access. So there's a lot more detail in the data tracking manual. Again, if you don't have a copy, ask your account manager, and they can share one with you. One thing I thought I'd note is within Portfolio Manager, there also is a data quality checker, which is relatively new. It's been around for a couple years now, I think. Before you share data with the Better Buildings Challenge, it can be beneficial to run this data quality checker. So you pick a property, and the time frame would be December 31st of 2016, and run the checker. And it will tell you whether you don't have 12 full months of data, or it catches some EUI anomalies as well. Some of the same things that Better Buildings Challenge checks for, the data quality checker checks for as well. So if you run this first, it's more likely to go smoothly through the Better Buildings Challenge data review process. I talked about the data collection template. This is just a kind of screenshot. Some of the basic information that's collected is the property name, the type, the zip code, the floor area, what time period the data is shared for, and the annual energy use by fuel type. And all of that is used to determine your source EUI for the property, which is the metrics we use to calculate your savings. All right, so now I'm going to get into once you share your data, what are we looking for in the data to show that it's complete and accurate, and how do we communicate with you about that? So I'm going to go through kind of 3 different reports, I guess. The first one being a data status report that's used early March after you, and not everybody gets this one. I'll talk a little bit more about it on the next slide. But if partners are sharing data in Portfolio Manager, but it's not quite complete, you might get this report to help point you in the right direction to get complete data. The data review report is the kind of primary tool we use to once you've shared complete data, to identify any anomalies in that data, calculate your energy performance improvement at both all the building levels and your portfolio level, and sets up a draft data display that will eventually go on the Solution Center. So the last report is more the public report, the Better Building Solution Center data display. So once you're reviewed and final, we put that on the program website to promote your accomplishments. So I'll talk in a little bit more detail about each of these. So the data status report, what happens is, March 1st is the timeline by which we'd like to have partners share data. So shortly after that, we look in Portfolio Manager to check how much data all of the partners that have shared. And we kind of use that to send reminders or status updates with partners after that. So if you've shared square footage to match what your commitment is for the Better Buildings Challenge, you're probably in good shape, and maybe you're just can kind of jump right to that data review report, the next step in the process. But if you're less than that, somewhere between 50 and 90% of the square feet you've committed to the program, we run this data status report. And it's pretty simple. It's got a list of your property IDs, and we run the report for the period ending December 31st, 2016, which is what we're trying to share. And if you have data through that period, it will usually give you an EUI. If you don't have data through that period, it will show the energy current date. So the property circled shows that it has data through October 31st, 2016. And this one actually, I will say, is not entirely correct because some of those, the EUIs on the right really shouldn't be computing in this screenshot. So you won't get an EUI, but it will tell you how much data you have. So this one will tell you you need to find and enter data for November and December in order to have complete data. All right, so once you do have complete data, we run a data review report. And probably a lot of you on the call have seen one of these before. I'm not going to go through every single detail, but I will walk through the kind of the 1 through 5 numbered steps here. So one of the things we do first is we review the building level, property level data to find anomalies or unusual data that should be checked. And those will show up highlighted in yellow in your report. And these could be things like the square foot seems unusually small or large, or the EUI seems unusually small or large. So this one's being circled here because the EUI is over 1,000, whereas the rest of the property is around 200 or 300. We may also check for a change in square feet. So your property shows up as being 20% larger in 2016 than it was in 2015. Is that correct? Maybe there was an addition built, or maybe it was some sort of data entry error that needs to be updated. So once we identify the properties with unusual data, the partners have an opportunity to either confirm or update the data. Sometimes, the low EUI on a property may be correct because it's a parking garage and it really has a low EUI. But other times it may be, we entered our electricity data, but we didn't enter our natural gas data, so we need to fix that. So partners can fix the data or confirm it and add some notes to the data review report. And then on our end, in number 3, we will note whether properties have passed all the checks on DOE's end or not. There are some other notes that have to do with new construction and acquisitions and making sure we're handling those correctly. So we'll update those couple of columns. And when a property passes all the reviews, it's included in your savings calculations. The next thing we check in number 4 is how much data has been shared and has been reviewed. So if a property either doesn't have any yellow highlights or you've addressed any yellow highlights, it's considered passing checks. We add up all the square footage associated with those properties, and we compare that to your committed square feet for the program. And if it's above certain thresholds, usually 80% for most partners. If a partner is on the cusp of potentially achieving their goal, we do have some higher standards for the amount of reviewed data. And finally, in step 5, we compute the portfolio-wide energy savings, and those are what's going to be published on the program website. So once the data is final, and you've got that energy performance result, your savings number, we prepare a draft of what's going to eventually go on the Better Building Solutions Center, and it's included within the Excel workbook where we also have the data review report. And we share with partners some draft text for describing your accomplishments. And some of that's kind of boilerplate that's similar for a lot of partners, but then there are a few sentences that deal with, how did you get to 15% savings? So you have an opportunity to talk about what you've done. So we'll share a version of that in Excel, and the partners can comment on that and provide it back to us. And I will add that this is kind of a critical step to ensure that the results are posted on the Better Building Solutions Center. Sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking about the data and finalizing the data, and then we get to the step where we just need a sentence to make sure we can get your results live. So I want to make sure that the momentum continues and everyone responds to these requests so we can get your results published live on the Solutions Center and get you recognized for your accomplishments. Here we just have a couple of screenshots of the Better Building Solutions Center. On the left, the partner profile is kind of the main partner page, which will show both your goals for energy savings. In this case, there's a 20% goal and 7% progress towards that energy goal. And then on the right is the more detailed energy performance results with some of the more detailed charts and graphs. All right, with that, I will move into the next section on the data reports and how they can help. So, part of the process, and most of what I was focused on till this point, was kind of making sure that data that you shared was accurate and complete for the purposes of recognition for the program. But what we found in talking to a lot of partners is, they're concerned with making sure data is accurate and complete as well, and going through this process can be helpful for them to make sure that they have clean data that they can use to kind of report to management as well. So some of the benefits of the data reports may include the flagging of properties where data isn't being tracked properly, or that might have billing problems. So sometimes partners have seen that, through those little yellow highlighted cells, they learn things about their properties that they didn't know about. They're able to go back and fix them after the fact. The data reports can help identify high energy users that have very high energy intensity compared to other properties. Sometimes looking at them in the kind of this Excel spreadsheet form, it makes it easy to identify those that kind of stand out from the others. Looking at energy intensity trends over time, there's kind of a quick comparison in the file of your baseline to your current and the percent savings. You can also identify opportunities for savings. Some partners that we work with are also working with service providers that are transferring data from a third-party tracking software into Portfolio Manager, and then we're pulling it out of Portfolio Manager. So this data report has sometimes become a tool between to help us and the partner and the service provider all communicate and be on the same page about the partner's progress. It may help you identify vacant buildings with energy waste. It can also help you recognize high-performing and most improved buildings. So with that, I'm going to just give a few examples of partners and how they've used the data review reports and some of the benefits they've seen, one of which Sam Bleemer is going to talk about her experience with Will County, and then I've got a few other examples that I will share. And I will add that if anyone on the phone has had a good experience and had some benefits from using these data review reports, we'd be happy to hear from you at the end as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Sam.
Thank you so much. My name again is Sam Bleemer. I have been with the Will County Land Use Department Resource Recovery and Energy Division for 2 years now. And I have recently entered into the role as Energy and Conservation Specialist. I previously assisted the Energy and Conservation Specialist in data compilation and analysis for our participation in the Better Buildings Challenge. Since I will now be the lead project manager for Will County's participation, I'm going to talk today about how Will County was able to use the BBC Data Review Report, being the analysis of the energy usage and cost data shared between your organization's portfolio manager account and the BBC team, as a resource for identifying energy efficiency opportunities in some of our poorest performing buildings and making change. So Will County actually began using Portfolio Manager and participating in the BBC based on a participation of use in the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, or ARRA funds. Because we were already benchmarking and using ARRA funds to identify and complete energy efficiency improvements, Will County was invited to join the BBC. Before our involvement in the BBC here at Will County, there really was no motivation to learn where our energy costs were going or which buildings consume the most, or to address why these buildings were such heavy consumers of energy. So we weren't even really fully aware of some of our buildings and their ownership type, being rented or owned, and therefore our responsibility for the function of these buildings in terms of what utilities were included in lease agreements and which were paid by Will County. This is really a result of the silos that can exist in bureaucratic institutions, be it private or public, that lack of information sharing across departments that can lead to duplicated work or inefficient work. And the BBC created this opportunity for us to understand the energy usage and cost implications of our inefficient buildings so that we could create compelling project proposals for our county board and county leadership, that there really is a need for assessment, short-term planning, and long-term planning regarding the energy usage in our buildings. So we use our BBC Data Review Report to identify those buildings that really needed efficiency upgrading. And in our most recent BBC Data Review Report, we adjusted our property profile such that we added properties that were not originally part of our profile and removed those that we learned do not fit into this challenge, such as rented radio towers that are used for our emergency management agency and 911 services throughout our county, whose energy usage could not be altered to be more efficient given the nature of their operation. And one of the properties we added, the property I'm going to talk about today, was our River Valley Justice Center, which is a juvenile detention center for our county. And from our review, we learned that this property was an energy hog, having an EUI of 348 and an EUI degeneration of 217% from our baseline year of 2009 to current 2016. And we had not added the detention center to our property commitment. Had we not done that, we wouldn't have truly understood the negative impact of this building on our building profile. So we took action by building a relationship with the facilities manager at the detention center, breaking down those silos that I talked about earlier, and we really began to have conversation about the operation of this facility and shared the findings from our BBC review. After realizing that there was a multitude of issues within the detention center that could be sparking a high EUI, we looked back on a 2013 energy assessment performed by the Smart Energy Design Assistance Center, or CDAC, that identified energy cost reduction measures, or ECRMs, that we didn't really give enough attention to at the time when the report was done, but when we received our BBC review, it redirected our attention to this report. So following that involvement with the BBC and CDAC, we were able to apply for grants and incentives through the Illinois Department of Economic Opportunities Illinois Energy Now programs that aided in funding our HVAC and hot water heater replacements for our detention center, both of which are nearing completion at the end of this month actually, and the funds we will receive will total over $120,000 for that facility. So in the future, Will County is going to use the BBC data review report to still identify and further assess and address energy efficiency improvements, but more so at an elevated level now that we've had the opportunity to really address that low-hanging fruit and really had the opportunity to receive several capital equipment replacement reports. And now that we know that there are so many inefficiencies in several of our buildings, we will use this report to continually remind us of our progress that needs to be made, and the way in which we improve our properties will now change from using public funds managed by state departments. Because of recently passed legislation in our state, we'll be going through our utility providers to obtain funding for our energy efficiency projects. It is important to know for those of you who are from the private sector that many utility providers offer programs to private sector customers, be on a household, business, or industrial scale, to help fund those energy efficiency projects. Some other outcomes that we've been able to achieve using this review report is a capital equipment replacement fund, working to establish short-term and long-term capital equipment replacement schedules so that we are able to be more proactive about our energy efficiency projects and less reactive. And we are in the very early stages of discussing the usage of capital equipment and building maintenance software for our building operators and facilities managers so that we can have efficiencies across our building and be more consistent. And much of our work that we've accomplished would not be possible if we didn't have the opportunity to participate in the BBC and use the BBC data review report. What simply may seem like a checkbox item really can be used as this tool to leverage opportunities and build the necessary credibility within leadership, for our case, our county board. And sometimes when you're in an organization where the culture isn't necessarily conducive of energy efficiency movements, it really can give you that national scale credibility to help pledge your support. And it is necessary for me to note that as a public entity or any organization, to really show that you can save money and still be a steward of our shared environment, and really to be able to, for us to show that to our constituents is a very big part of this for us. So I want to thank you all for giving me the opportunity to share our story with you today.
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate the background and the story there. And one kind of takeaway I had is that you had an audit report done on the facility, so you've done a lot of the work, but sometimes having a report that kind of at a high level shows you how you're doing, and you've got a facility with an EUI of 348 next to other facilities that may have an EUI of 150, may motivate somebody to actually take action on that report when they might not otherwise have done so. So sometimes a lot of the work and the pieces are all in place, but you need the right tools for communicating and messaging to management. So. All right, with that, I will go ahead to a couple of other examples, kind of simpler ones, not as detailed as Sam's was. But I think things that are kind of common examples of what we've seen. This first one just involved generally in improving data quality. So with some of the retail partners that we participate with that are in the challenge, they have often larger portfolios with a lot of properties, and it's can be challenging to keep track of energy use across 1,000 properties in a portfolio, for example. So one retail partner we worked with, the first pass through the data review report, there were about 30% of the properties in the portfolio that contained some anomalies, had some of those little yellow cells. So the partner carried out a number of steps, including collecting baseline data for buildings by contacting the utility. So a lot of times, the partner may have been tracking data in recent years and may have the current year's data, but was missing the baseline data to go along with it. So sometimes you need to go back and do a little research and get that data. Identified sites that were closed and properly accounted for. In retail, again, with a large number of facilities, it can be a little difficult to keep track of that. So making sure that that's being done properly is important. And then identifying some maintenance issues that were responsible for some unusually low or high EUIs at specific locations. So in this case, it was, maybe the EUI values were real, but there were some problems at the site that needed some fixing. So after all that, the data review report was rerun. Many more of the properties were not flagged, and the partner had good enough data quality to get their data posted on the Solution Center. Another example I'll bring up is some low EUI values for a K-12 school partners. So this was a smaller partner, did not have 1,000 facilities, but 2 of their facilities had very low EUI values. And sometimes that takes a little investigation to figure out why that's the case. But in this case, it was caused by incomplete fuel oil data in Portfolio Manager. So in Portfolio Manager, you have to enter all of your fuels, electricity, natural gas if you have it, fuel oil if you have it, and you do need to have all of those fuels for the full year that's being reported, so for all of 2016. And fuel oil can be especially complicated because you don't necessarily get a monthly bill from the utility. You get billed when the deliveries happen. So you do need to enter those bills properly in Portfolio Manager and set up the billing period so that they do cover the whole calendar year of 2016. So sometimes that might mean entering 0 values for the summer when you're not getting any fuel oil data. So if that's not being done, the total fuel oil use is not evident in the kind of the reports that come out of Portfolio Manager. It makes it look like you have low EUI. So by running the report, seeing that it didn't pass some of these flags, we were able to help the partner look into that and fix the fuel oil data. It was updated with full data, and the final results were posted on the Solution Center. This last example was for a data center partner, so this one's a little more complicated. The data center partners, instead of using energy use per square foot, their metric is power usage effectiveness, which is the total energy of the property divided by the IT energy for the data centers themselves. So it's kind of a measure of the infrastructure, the heating and cooling energy associated with the data center. So after running the data review report, the partner's calculation of PUE was not matching the Portfolio Manager outputs. So the partner carried out a few steps, including repositioning and or repairing several meters, removing an unrelated load from the meter data to calculate an accurate PUE value. You do want to be isolating your IT energy and separately metering your HVAC energy and not putting it on the meters with the IT energy. And they finally simplified the calculation by treating 3 data halls as a single larger entry in Portfolio Manager to better align with the mechanical chiller configuration. Excuse me. And I won't get into all the details of that, but I think the point being, looking at the PUE value that they were getting out of Portfolio Manager, it didn't match theirs, and it took some steps to kind of figure out what they should be doing and how they should be calculating PUE, and the data review reports helped them kind of come to some conclusions and fix that. With that, I'm going to open it up to anyone else on the phone to see if anyone else has any thoughts on the data review process and anything they've gotten out of it.
Yeah, you might, I think everybody's muted, Sarah, so if you raise your hand or send a little note in the chat feature, then we'll be able to promote you to a speaker role so you can ask.
That may be a little more logistically challenging.
Mm.
I thought this would be more open. I think I saw a hand.
Yeah. Getting excited. Hold on. Virginia, can you help promote? Oh, I think the hand went down. Scott's got a question. Virginia, can you please promote Scott Moline? Scott, can you hear us?
Not sure we're having success in promoting him.
Well, how about right now? I think he's now he's. I see you muted, Scott. Apologies.
While we're waiting, Zach, were there any other questions that came in through the chat window?
Well, I'll just note that yes, we'll make sure everybody gets the slides, and if you are interested, I won't mention who, but Sam, somebody really liked your presentation and would like to connect with you, so we'll organize that offline. I think that was it for the questions.
I think we're trying to make Scott a presenter again. Is Scott able to? Or Gabriel, too, I think.
This is Gabe's proxy. Can you hear me? Am I coming through?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Sorry. My name is Joe O'Connor. I work with New York Power Authority. We administer New York State's Executive Order 88 program. So that involves every New York State agency providing us their energy consumption data since the baseline year, which for us is 2011. Once a year, we've been using the templates to push that data into the Better Billings Challenge portfolio. But our plan is for this coming year is to start to migrate our entire data set over to Portfolio Manager, which we don't have all the details worked out yet, but I thought is that Portfolio Manager would serve as our front end, and then what that would do for us is many things, but one, when it comes to BBC reporting, it'll make our life much easier. It'll be it sounds like an almost automated process. But where I'm going with that is, I guess, just a general question is, would you have any advice as to maybe a contact person or where to get started with migrating such a large data set from our current method to Portfolio Manager?
That's a good question. Are you actively working with your Better Billings Challenge account manager right now?
Yes, so that's probably the place to go.
I think start with that person. I think there's some help they can give you. There are a number of people that work on the Better Billings Challenge data review process that have more data expertise too. And your account manager can kind of grab one of them and bring them in to give you some advice during that process.
Okay, thank you.
And that's great. I think, sounds like good progress, and I think it will make life easier when it comes to share data in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had said 85% of the BBC participants right now are currently using Portfolio Manager, so it just seems like if that is an option, then there's many good reasons to do so.
Great.
And Sarah, it took 6 of us, but I think we unmuted Scott. Scott, can you hear us?
I'm on the conference call. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Oh, good. Well, thank you for putting all that together. Very good presentation. So, so my question is on the retail side or on the restaurant side, we're using the energy per transaction, and went through the process last year with our company restaurants, and now we have franchisee restaurants as well that are in the challenge. So, we've been working with them on Energy Star Portfolio Manager and working to get their data into the system. So, there's like 1,000 franchisee restaurants in the challenge made up of 15 different franchisees. So I've gone through the process now 15 different times, so I feel like I'm getting a handle on it. But my question there is how best to, as we're sending the data in, being able to parse it out so that the individual franchisees can be looking at their own data. And this may be more of a question for the Better Buildings Challenge team, but it's one that we're, on the one hand, we want to report as the Wendy's network, on the other hand, with 1,300 restaurants in the challenge, I don't have the bandwidth to be able to parse those out directly. So just kind of what your thinking is there on how to be able to benchmark against all these different franchisees in different markets.
Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of different parts to it. I think it's great that you guys are doing this and not just looking at your corporate facilities, but also expanding it to look at the franchisees. And I think Portfolio Manager is a good tool to help with that because it is a tool that's free and available to anybody. So any of your franchisees can go in and use the tool. So it's something easier to for you to push out. And I know as far as trying to figure out how to best report that data to show progress towards the Better Buildings Challenge, we've had some discussions with you guys to date about how to do that. And I think there maybe a point of comparison is we have kind of some standard reports that we show progress, from your baseline year to your current year, and how EUI has gone down over time that we use across all partners. But as needed, we can show different things in those Better Buildings Challenge data displays. And a point of comparison is we've got some large cities that are working on some of their own buildings, the city buildings, but also recruiting private sector building in the city to participate in the Better Buildings Challenge. So we've been able to kind of show separately, here's how your public buildings are doing, here's how the private buildings in your city are doing, and here's how you're doing as a whole. So I think for your franchisees, we can do something similar. Here's how your corporate facilities are doing, here's how your franchisees are doing, and here's how you're doing as a whole.
And that we're excited about that. To make the data transfer or data sharing easier, what we've done is, I think we talked about this early on, but we've actually helped the franchisees set up their own portfolio manager accounts and then shared it with a master Wendy's account. And then that in turn is shared with the BBC, so you're not having 16 different accounts trying to reconcile all of those.
Yeah, I think that's great. And
then,
you know, as far as like kind of showing the individual franchisee results, I think what we've discussed is that that's something that may not go on the program website, but we can work with you behind the scenes to kind of put the information in place in that data review report, and you can share it back.
Well, perfect. And we're kind of down in the weeds. Sorry to kind of go down that path, but since we're talking about data and data sharing, you know, that has been one of the powers that I've seen with portfolio managers, being able to share that data back and forth, and then we've named the individual locations with the franchisee name, so we're able to then parse it out a little bit easier as well.
Yeah, I think it's just a good example. There's a lot of flexibility and a lot of things you can do if you're creative.
Good. Well, thank you for getting me online.
Thanks. Any other questions or comments?
I don't see any other hands raised here.
Okay. All right, with that, maybe I'll flip to the last slide. Oh, actually, the second to last slide. First, a reminder that the 2017 Better Building Summit is coming up May 15th to 17th in Washington, D.C. And I believe registration is open. Is that right, Zach?
Yes, registration opened last Monday.
Excellent. So we encourage you to go and go ahead and register early. If you have questions following this presentation, definitely contact your Better Buildings account manager. They can either answer the questions or find somebody who can if they're not able to. And a reminder of kind of the timeline: in order to get recognized for your progress at the Better Building Summit, please try to share data by March 1st and work with your account manager to finalize data by April 14th. Andre, any last words that you want to share?
No, Sarah, although it looks as though the slides are no longer showing up. I'm not sure if that's a huge deal. Okay, there we go.
Just pulled it up.
Good.
Anybody missed the summit slide? Sorry, that was the save the date slide. And please register for the summit. And there's the final timeline.
There we go. Good. So unless one of my colleagues spots a final question that came in, I think what we'll do is close up the webinar, but thank everybody who attended and those really great questions, and especially want to thank Sam Bleemer from Will County for sharing her experience, which was very interesting. And you know, as you think through this process, just remember that we're here to help your account managers as well as the DOE Better Buildings team. So as you run into your issues, any issues, your account manager is really the first person to reach out to, and we'll do everything we can to help you navigate this process. And with that, I think we'll close. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.